Hey guys, tonight we're going to do something incredibly relaxing, live a full day as a 14th century French peasant. Yes, that's right. Mud, manure, misery, and some very questionable bread. Because if you've ever wanted to wake up in a hut made of sticks and regrets with a to-do list longer than a monk's confession scroll, tonight's your night. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake by the end, leave a comment with your location and local time. I love knowing who else is wandering through history with me under a blanket. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up before the sun. Not because you're motivated, but because a chicken just walked across your face. Again, it's the third time this week. You make a mental note to relocate the coop. You won't, but it's comforting to pretend. The first thing you smell isn't dew or flowers or fresh baked bread. No, it's damp straw, old sweat, and something that might be goat. Your nose tries to retreat back into your skull. Not today, friend. The roof is leaking again. A single drop of water hangs over your forehead like it's considering making a point. It does. Plop. You sit up, if you can call it sitting. Your back sounds like someone stepping on a bag of frozen twigs. But you're alive. That counts for something. The floor is dirt, literally dirt. Not rustic, not earth-toned, just dirt. Cold, compact, unforgiving earth, shared with at least one beetle and something that might be a sock, or a very ambitious mushroom. Outside, the sky is still grayish blue, but the world is already moving. Distant clinks of metal chickens arguing like they're on medieval Twitter, and your neighbor Henri cursing the cow. Again, you throw on your tunic. It's made of wool mostly. Well, what's left of it is wool. The rest is patches. You've patched the patches. Some parts are now held together by pure optimism. Shoes. You have what you generously call foot coverings. One is made from leather. The other is made from a dream you once had about leather. You grab a hoe, wooden handle, splintery, blessed by generations of tired hands, and head out into the fog. It clings to you like guilt, thick and sticky, and it smells faintly of something decomposing. Probably the compost pile. Hopefully, your task this morning is simple: turn the field. Again, because it rained. Again. And your landlord believes mud equals productivity. The mud squelches underfoot, like it's trying to reclaim you. You feel your soul leave your body every time the hoe hits a stone. And there are so many stones, you're beginning to suspect the earth just grows them out of spite. Hours pass, or maybe weeks. Time loses meaning when you're knee-deep in soggy soil, surrounded by the wet whisper of grass, judging your life choices. Your stomach growls. You remember breakfast? Ah, yes, the bread. It's in your pouch, wrapped in cloth and hope. You pull it out. It's a small, dry chunk of barley bread. You tap it against a rock. The rock blinks, still edible, barely. You gnaw. It resists. So much so, you begin to question if it's bread or a disguised relic from the Crusades. Around noon, the sun briefly shows up. Not warmly. More like a manager doing a surprise inspection. It glares, then disappears behind a cloud, ashamed of this whole situation. A bird poops near your foot. You consider this a blessing. It didn't land on you. Small wins. You hear laughter in the distance. Children playing with a stick and their imagination. You remember when that was you. Before your spine learned the word permanent, by late afternoon, your hands are raw. Your arms ache. You've turned enough soil to build a small, accidental sculpture garden of rocks you hate. And then it's over. Not because the work is done, but because the sun is gone. And peasant law says, if you can't see your own foot, you're allowed to stop. You trudge back to the hut. Each step is a negotiation. Your knees are in open rebellion. Your lower back is filing paperwork for a new host body. Inside, the fire hasn't been lit. You forgot to gather wood. Again. So you sit in the dark with a bowl of turnip water. You tell yourself it's soup. You lie beautifully. And there you are. End of day one, covered in dirt, mildly bruised. Bread still lodged in your molars like a medieval memory, and yet weirdly alive. You made it. One day down. Only a lifetime to go. Tomorrow, maybe you'll fix the roof. Or not. Let's be honest. Also, why does your pillow smell like cheese? You wake up again. This time, it's not the chicken. It's your stomach. It's growling in full Gregorian chant. You briefly wonder if it's trying to summon help. It's still dark out. Not night dark. Just that pre-dawn. Is this real? Or is this a dream about digging darkness? Your body feels like it was borrowed, used, and returned with no refund policy. You reach for breakfast. Technically, it's the same bread as yesterday, which is to say, it's not bread anymore. It has evolved, hardened, possibly developed a personality. You try to break it in half. It resists. You bite anyway, because hunger is louder than reason. The first crunch is concerning. You hope that was a crumb and not part of your own tooth. There's a splash outside, rain. Of course, you peek outside. It's not just rain, it's the kind that feels personal. The kind that soaks your spirit before your socks. You sigh, put on your wet tunic. Because it never really dried, slide into your damp shoes, still one leather, one dream, and head out. Today's job is extra fun, gathering reeds near the stream, because apparently your lord wants new roof thatching. Not for your roof, of course. For his goat shed. Priorities. The path to the stream is slippery and slightly alive. Mud clings to you like an overly affectionate ghost. Your feet squish, squelch, and occasionally disappear. The reeds are tall, sharp, and vaguely resentful. You begin slicing them with a dull knife that's as tired as you are. Your hands turn red, not bleeding, just offended. A frog watches you. Judging, you take a short break and sit on a rock. It's wet. Of course, you chew the rest of your bread. It now resembles something between a fossil and a dare. Somewhere nearby, you hear singing, high off key and beautiful in a desperate kind of way. A young girl and her grandmother are foraging mushrooms. You can hear them laugh when one of them slips and falls. You smile just a little, not because she fell, but because laughter is rare currency here. It buys warmth in your chest. You return home with a bundle of reeds mud in places you didn't know you had, and a strong desire to time travel forward 600 years, but no such luck. Back at the village, you're tasked with delivering the reeds to the manor. You shuffle up the path, slipping twice and pretending it was intentional. The manor looms like a smug stone turtle. Fancy windows, a door that doesn't creak, a luxury, and a smell of baked meat that makes your soul weep. You knock. A servant opens the door. looks at your clothes like they've committed a crime. You hand over the reeds. No thanks. Just a nod. You walk away. You smell like swamp and rejection. Back at your hovel, it's still raining. The roof is dripping again. You catch the drops in a bowl. After a while, it sounds like a drum solo from a very sad band. Dinner. Oh, it's the classic barley mush with hints of turnip and existential dread. You chew slowly, pretending it's stew. You imagine beef. Then remember, you've seen beef once, at a festival. From 200 feet away, it had a guard. Your neighbor Henri stops by. He smells worse than you, which is comforting. He has a single radish and no teeth. He offers to share. You decline politely. He tells a joke about the Lord's pig falling in the moat. You laugh too hard. Not because it's funny, because it's the first joke all week. That night, as you lie on your straw bed, still damp, always damp, you stare at the wooden beam above you. It creaks ominously. You whisper to yourself, "Please don't fall tonight." The beam answers by doing absolutely nothing, which is frankly a win. You close your eyes. Sleep does not come quickly. Your legs twitch. Your fingers still feel the texture of reeds. Your back reminds you it hates you. And then silence. Finally. But before you drift off completely, one last thought hits you. There's still half a loaf of bread left. And that tragically is the highlight of your week. The third day begins with a drip. A cold, precise drip. Right between your eyes. You blink. The roof is leaking again, but this time it has developed aim. It has studied your face and chosen violence. You scoot to the side. The straw crackles beneath you like brittle bones, which reminds you you're back. It refuses to bend properly today. You get halfway up and freeze in a hunch like a human question mark. Fitting, because you are indeed questioning everything. The rain has stopped technically. But what remains is something worse, French peasant fog. It's not romantic mist. It's heavy, wet, suspiciously green in places. The kind of fog that crawls into your clothes and whispers, "You will never be warm again." You dress quickly, or as quickly as one can, when one's pants are made of damp wool and bad decisions. Today your task is repairing the fence, or what's left of it. A wild pig came through last night, probably looking for a better life. It destroyed 2 sections, left a mess, and possibly insulted your craftsmanship. You gather your tools. A hammer that's more splinter than handle. Nails that were straight 2 seasons ago. A handful of twine. Hope. The walk to the fence is short but perilous. Everything is mud. The path has become a slip and slide for poor choices. You arrive. The fence is worse than you remembered. One section looks like it's trying to lie down. Another is actively missing. And the third is being held together by a single, very brave weed. You get to work. The wood is damp. The nails bend. Your fingers bend more. Each strike of the hammer makes a sound that echoes through your soul. Somewhere deep inside, your ancestors wince. A bird lands nearby, watches, then flies away, probably to file a complaint. Halfway through, you sit on a stump and take a break. Your breakfast this morning was a single onion and some wishful thinking. You chew the onion, slowly, tears and all. Not from emotion, it's just a very aggressive onion. Across the road you see a cart pass. It's the tax collector. Of course it is. You duck behind the half-finished fence like a guilty shrub. If he sees you, he'll ask about the grain quota. And if you explain that the rain ruined everything, he'll remind you the sun is your responsibility too. Once he's gone, you exhale. You didn't breathe for nearly a minute. Congratulations, you've invented medieval apnea. You finish the fence by late afternoon. It's passable. If the pig returns, maybe it'll be impressed by your effort. Maybe it'll go around. Maybe it'll critique your symmetry. You're not sure what pigs do in their spare time. Back at home, you remove your shoes. Or rather, they remove themselves. The mud sucked the soles clean off. Inside the hut, your mother has lit a small fire. The smoke refuses to go up the chimney. It swirls around like an indecisive ghost. She's making soup. You peer into the pot. Ah, yes. The classic blend cabbage water salt. If you're lucky, regret if you're not. You eat in silence. The soup is hot, which is nice. It also tastes like boiled blanket, which is less nice. After dinner, you help patch the wall with mud. You're not sure if it keeps the wind out or just gives it something new to laugh at. The light fades. The candles are almost gone. You only use them for emergencies now, like finding a mouse in your sock or a beetle in your bed. Tonight, you sit quietly and sew your tunic. The rip is long and the thread is short. Like most things in your life, you poke your finger twice. The third time, you don't even flinch. That's growth, right? As you lie down on the straw, still damp, because of course, you hear the wind howl outside. Your roof creaks again. You mutter to yourself, just stay up there, old friend. We're all doing our best. The drip has moved to a new spot. You name it Jacques. Jacques will now be your ceiling companion. Sleep comes slowly, but when it does, you dream of sunshine, warm bread, and shoes that match. One day, maybe. For now, it's you, your fence, and Jacques. And weirdly, that's enough. You wake up to screaming. Not your own, thankfully. It's Madame Leclerc, 2 huts over, having a very intense debate with her goat. You don't understand the words, but the energy is universal. Something about missing cheese, betrayal, and possibly taxes. Speaking of taxes, today's the day, tax day. You try to crawl back under your straw mat, but Jacques, your loyal leak drip companion, plinks twice. Guilt, accountability, moisture. You groan and sit up. There's no breakfast. Not even onion this time. Just the sound of your stomach trying to resign. You throw on your tunic, which has reached new levels of crunchiness. At this point, it could probably stand up without you. Your mother hands you a pouch of grain. Half your harvest. The best half, obviously. Because your lord prefers his taxes moisture-free and your soul pre-squeezed. You trudge toward the manor. Every step feels like handing over a piece of your personality. Joy. Left it back near the cabbage plot. Hope. Dropped somewhere near the compost heap. The line is already long. Neighbors murmur. Children whimper. Chickens, oddly, are silent. Even they know today isn't a cluckable event. At the front of the line, the steward sits on a chair with cushions. Cushions, that's basically royalty. He eyes each offering with the intensity of a man who's never farmed a day in his life, but holds opinions about grain like they're personal. You reach the front, he inspects your sack, sniffs it, weighs it, frowns. Of course, you're under by a handful, he says. Like that handful isn't your breakfast for the next 2 days. You stammer something about the rain, the blight, the pig. He sighs. writes something ominous on a scroll and takes the grain anyway. You ask if that's it. He smiles. The kind of smile you only see in nightmares and legal documents. No, the chicken, too. You blink. What chicken? He points behind you. And sure enough, your only hen, Henrietta, has followed you. Probably out of solidarity or hunger. He claims her on behalf of the Lord. Henrietta clucks in protest. You do too quietly. But you both know how this ends. You walk home with empty hands and an emptier heart. Henrietta was more than a chicken. She was a source of eggs' warmth and the occasional listener when you needed to scream into the void. Back at the hut, your mother doesn't ask. She just nods, then hands you a bucket. Time to fetch water. Again, you make your way to the well. The path is worn like your patience. At the well, young Alain is already there drawing water with a rope, so frayed it looks like it's made of old hair and prayer. You take your turn. The bucket groans. You groan louder. The water is murky today. A little green, a little brown, a lot suspicious. You drink anyway. It tastes like history, bad history. You fill your pail and carry it home. Half spills. Some on the road, some on your leg, some inexplicably into your shoe. Again, the dream shoe. Still holding on. The afternoon is spent picking stones from the field. You don't know why. They just grow back. Like disappointment, the sun is unusually warm. It makes your tunic itchy, which makes your arms red, which makes you consider nudity. But modesty is one of the few things left that's free. For now, you see a priest walk by. He's smiling clean and holding a loaf of bread the size of your face. You stare too long. He notices. You look away. Later that evening, the village gathers for prayers. You sit in the back, not because you're less holy, just because that's where the only bench without splinters is. The priest talks about humility, obedience, the nobility of suffering. He does this while wearing shoes that match and a robe that doesn't itch. You nod politely, then go home. Dinner is creative. A turnip, a crushed snail, accidental, and some questionable broth, made from boiled cabbage peels. You eat in silence. Jacques plinks once. The fire sputters. You sigh. As you lie back, your mother whispers, "They took the goose too." You stare at the ceiling. They took Henrietta, and now the goose. You close your eyes and say a short prayer. Dear heavens, please let the pigs remain. This morning, something feels different. You wake up and realize the hut is oddly quiet. Jacques, the ceiling leak, is silent, suspiciously so. You sit up, stretch, wait for your back to make that usual pop like a wine cork with commitment issues. But even your spine seems mildly cooperative today. Outside, the sun is shining. Shining, not dimly, pushing through clouds like a sad candle, but actual rays touching your face like, "Hey, peasant, just for today, I don't hate you." You blink, suspicious. Still you grab your tunic, crispy as ever, lace up the shoe, and whatever the other thing is, and step outside. You're going to the village market. That's right. Market day. It happens once a week, sometimes twice if the river doesn't flood and the pigs behave. And today, you're not working someone else's land. You're going to pretend you live a life of variety and options. The road is buzzing. Neighbors walk with baskets of root vegetables, dried herbs, or hope disguised as soup ingredients. A few even hum. They'll regret that later. But for now, spirits are unusually high. You pass the baker's stall. The smell hits you like a warm punch to the soul. Bread. Real bread. Fresh. Crusty. Possibly illegal in 6 villages. You don't buy any, of course. You just stand near it. Inhale deeply. Consider proposing to it. Then you move on. Next, the fishmonger. He has 3 fish. One is whole. One is just a head. The third is speculative. Still he yells like he's selling golden trout from the king's private pond. Children dart between stalls, giggling, holding sticks that have been promoted to toys. One kid runs by with a beat on a string. You're not sure what game that is, but they look thrilled. You pause by the cloth merchant. He has colors. Real ones. Blue. Green. Even a piece of crimson, so bright it feels illegal. You touch it. It feels like a cloud with ambitions. The merchant glares. You apologize with your eyes, then drift on. At the end of the row, something extraordinary. A small troupe of traveling performers, jugglers, a lute player, a woman balancing on barrels while reciting a poem about cheese. You've never seen this poem before. Or cheese, really. You laugh out loud, once, quietly. Then immediately look around to make sure no one saw. It's hard being happy in public. It attracts questions. You continue walking and catch a glimpse of the Lord's family. They've arrived. In full regalia. Rich fabric silk gloves, absurdly tiny shoes meant only for show. The lady of the house wears a hat shaped like a steeple. It's at least 2 feet tall and could comfortably house a small family of owls. They're being escorted by guards who look bored but well fed. As they pass, people bow. You do too, mostly to avoid eye contact. You've seen this family before, but only at a distance. From here, they look clean. Too clean. Suspiciously clean. The Lord's son glances at your clothes, sneers slightly, then walks on. You remind yourself not to trip him. You also remind yourself that not tripping him is basically a charitable act. You deserve a sainthood. You pass a mirror shard tied to a pole probably meant for the rich, but you can't help it. You look. Oh, it's not great. You have hay in your hair, something unidentifiable on your cheek, and your tunic has been inside out since Tuesday. You sigh. This is the medieval version of accidentally FaceTiming someone at 7 a.m. You move away quickly and find shelter near the dried bean stall. There's an old woman there. She offers you a sample. You eat a single bean. It's perfect. You almost cry. But then she asks for a copper coin, and you remember you have 3 things in your pocket. A rock you like the shape of a string, and a breadcrumb. You give her the breadcrumb. She does not accept. You return home before sunset. The market is winding down. The smell of baked bread fades into chimney smoke and fish regret. Children now carry fewer sticks and more mud. Someone's goat has gone rogue again. Back in your hut, your mother asks how it was. You pause. It was. You say, and smile faintly colorful. Dinner is leftover turnip mash, but it feels brighter tonight because for a brief, ridiculous moment, you got to pretend you lived in a world with options, with color, with cheese poetry. Jacques plinks again. back from his mysterious silence. You whisper to the ceiling, "Did you see the hat? It had two birds on it." He drips once, probably in approval. You fall asleep smiling. It smells like cabbage and smoke and yesterday's dreams. But your stomach is full, and tomorrow hasn't started yet. It is cold. Not grab a blanket cold. Not wear two tunics cold. This is, I can see my breath inside the house cold. You wake up with your nose frozen. You check to see if it's still attached. Barely. You consider naming it separately from your body now. Maybe Frosty. Jacques the ceiling drip is solid. He has become Jacques the icicle. You admire his evolution. You also pray he doesn't fall directly onto your face. You sit up shivering like a leaf in a judgmental wind. There is no fire, no coal, no wood, just hope. And it's not particularly flammable. You wrap yourself in every scrap of cloth you own. You look like a fashion disaster designed by a scarecrow with commitment issues. Your breath fogs the air like dragon smoke if dragons were cold underfed and very, very confused. Outside winter has arrived early. The world is white, but not the romantic snowfall and silence kind. It's more like everything has died and frost is dancing on the bones kind. You step outside. Instant regret. The wind slaps your cheeks. The kind of slap that says, "Oh, you thought yesterday was bad? Adorable." Your job today, fetching firewood from the communal pile, which is unfortunately located near the forest edge half a mile away. Uphill, through snow. Barefoot. Okay, not entirely barefoot. One foot has that dream of a shoe. The other is wrapped in burlap and desperate thoughts. The snow crunches under your feet. Your toes say rude things to you in every language they know. You pass Henri, who is carrying a single log like it's made of gold. He grins toothless and victorious. "Only took me an hour," he wheezes. You nod, because any more movement might snap something. You reach the woodpile. It's sad. A few twigs. 2 logs. One of them already claimed by a goat who is staring you down like it dares you to try. You choose a few branches and begin the slow trudge home. By the time you return, your hands no longer feel like hands. They feel like someone else's hands left outside too long. Your mother takes one look at you and tucks the twigs into the hearth. The fire starts. Reluctantly, you sit in front of it, like a pilgrim before a relic. You would marry this fire if it asked. Dinner tonight is turnip stew. Again, but it's warm, and that makes it gourmet. Your mother hums a lullaby as she stirs. The tune is old, with words long forgotten. It sounds like something people used to believe in. You eat slowly, savoring the heat. Not the taste turnips taste like disappointment dipped in water, but the warmth. After dinner, you help patch a hole in the wall with hay and frozen mud. It doesn't work, but it makes you feel useful. Illusion is a valuable currency. Later, you lie in bed, under every blanket sack and possibly rug you can find. The fire is down to embers. You curl up like a half-frozen snail and listen. The wind howls outside, clawing at the shutters like it's trying to be let in. Inside, it's quiet. Jacques has returned to drip form. He plinks softly. You whisper, "You're lucky you don't have toes." Your mother snores faintly in the corner. It's oddly comforting, like a lullaby made of tiredness. You stare at the ceiling and imagine a world with thick boots, with mittens, with something called insulation. But mostly, you just hope the fire makes it to morning. and that your nose doesn't fall off in the night. Small dreams, reasonable expectations. Winter in 14th century France doesn't offer more than that. You wake up to the sound of bells, not church bells, festival bells. You blink. Today is the feast of St. Martin, a holy day, a day of rest, a day of celebration, a day off. Well, for some people, you stretch. Your back agrees. Barely. One side of your body says, let's go, and the other whispers, let's just rot quietly. Outside the village is buzzing. Children are running barefoot across frost-covered paths, faces red with cold, but grinning like fools. Someone is singing. Off-key. Passionately. You pull on your nicest tunic, which just means the one with the fewest patches. You tie it at the waist with a bit of twine that once held up a sack of onions. High fashion. You head toward the village square. There are banners made of fraying linen, a single goat wearing a ribbon, bread laid out on a long wooden table, guarded like state secrets. A man with a lute strums something vaguely melodic while squinting at his own fingers like they're freelancing. You spot the priest dressed in gold-threaded robes, quoting scripture and trying not to trip on his own cuffs. You stand near the fire pit in the center of the square. It's blazing. Your toes thaw just enough to remember they exist and immediately begin complaining. Someone hands you a small cup of warm cider. You stare at it like it's magic. It might be. You sip. Oh. It's slightly sour, definitely fermented, and burns your throat in a way that makes you believe again. An elder begins a sermon. You listen politely for the first few minutes about humility, gratitude, blessings, and the virtue of hard work. Then your mind drifts, as it often does. You think about bread, not just today's dry barley bread, but soft bread, white bread, with honey, maybe even cheese. You once dreamed about cheese so vividly you woke up chewing your blanket. As the sermon ends, people cheer. Someone starts dancing. You watch from a safe distance. Then a woman grabs your hand. She's older, joyful, missing 2 front teeth, and stronger than you by at least 3 goats worth of force. You spin. Once, twice. You're laughing. Genuinely. It's been a while. The music speeds up. Your feet trip. You nearly take out a basket of apples. The apples win. After that, you retreat to a bench, breathless, sweaty, possibly blessed. A child hands you a piece of cake. Cake. You don't question it. You eat it in 2 bites. It's dry, slightly burnt, and the best thing you've had in weeks. You look around. People are smiling, eating, hugging. Someone is juggling 3 turnips and a shoe. For a moment, just a moment, life feels like it has color again. But of course, it's still your life. Just as you're considering a second cup of cider, the steward appears. He's holding a scroll. Everyone quiets. He reads a new decree from the Lord, extra labor to rebuild a bridge starting tomorrow. All able-bodied peasants must report before dawn. No exceptions. You blink. The warmth in your chest freezes over. You clutch your cup tighter. People murmur. Some groan. A few stare at the fire, like they might throw themselves into it just to get out of the bridge duty. But no one protests. Because that's not how this works. You head home early. As you walk, the wind picks up. Your cider turns cold in your hand. You toss it into the ditch. The joy in your bones has already begun to sour. Back at the hut, your mother asks, "Was it a good feast?" You nod. It was nice. You don't mention the bridge. Not yet. Let her sleep one more night in peace. Dinner is leftover stew and the last bit of cake you saved in your sleeve. You eat in silence. Jacques drips, not from the ceiling, but from your roof's edge. Outside, he's joined by a dozen smaller leaks. You sigh. Tomorrow you build a bridge. Tonight you sit by the dying fire and hold on to the taste of cake, even if it's already turning to dust. You wake up sore in places that didn't exist yesterday. Apparently, bridge building uses muscles you only develop when you're desperate, underfed, and mildly furious at the nobility. The rooster crows, which is unfair because you no longer have a rooster. You suspect Henrietta's ghost haunts that bird just to spite you. You dress in silence. Your tunic smells like smoke-wet wool and something agricultural. You don't ask questions. You just tug it on and hope it holds. Outside the village is already moving. The bridge site is down by the river, the same river that floods every spring and erases all human effort like it's playing a long, soggy joke. You arrive to see a pile of stones, several long logs, two rusty tools, and a foreman who looks like he eats complaints for breakfast. He grunts. You lift. And just like that, your shoulders belong to the bridge now. The work is brutal. First hauling rocks, then rolling logs, then being yelled at for the way you rolled the logs. It's a team effort, by which they mean everyone else watches while you try not to collapse. You slip once. Land face first into the mud. No one helps. But someone does laugh. You take comfort in the fact that someday, far in the future, your descendants might invent unions. At midday, a pause. You sit by the river, chewing on a hunk of bread, so stale it could be used as a weapon. You wonder briefly if you're just eating a compressed memory of sadness. Next to you, Alain is coughing again. He's only 12, but his lungs sound older than time. You ask if he's okay. He shrugs. Mom says I'm building strong character. He then proceeds to cough directly onto your bread. You eat it anyway. Peasant immunity is less about strength and more about surrender. The foreman returns. You hoist more rocks. The sun fades behind clouds. Wind picks up. It smells like damp leaves and wet dog and regret. By late afternoon, the bridge is something. It wobbles slightly. It groans when walked upon. You're not sure if it's structurally sound or just spiritually exhausted. The foreman shrugs. It'll hold till spring, which in peasant speak means it'll collapse in March and we'll do this again in April. You limp home. Your arms no longer function. You attempt to wave at a passing neighbor and instead just point vaguely at a tree. They wave back anyway. Back at the hut, your mother is boiling something that might be soup or might be laundry. You sit near the fire, which is mostly ash and ambition. She hands you a mug. You sip. It tastes like cabbage and hope. Good day, she asks. You think about the mud, the laughter, the rock that rolled over your foot and made you scream like a very dignified duck. Productive, you say. She nods. That's almost good. After dinner, you lie in bed and stare at the ceiling. Jacques the drip is oddly quiet tonight, possibly frozen, possibly planning. The silence is deep until you hear it. Scratch, scratch, scrape. Something in the wall. Again. You whisper, please be a mouse and not a metaphor. No response. You pull the blanket up to your chin. Your hands ache. Your feet tingle. Your back hums like a choir of minor injuries. And yet, despite it all, you built a bridge today. It might collapse. It might be cursed. But it exists. That's something. As your eyes close, you dream not of stone or wood or soup. You dream of soft beds, hot baths, shoes that match. You dream of a world where bridges build themselves and peasants sleep in peace. You wake up with a toothache. Not the polite kind, the medieval hello, I'm here to ruin your week kind. It pulses behind your eye like a tiny drum of doom. You sit up and immediately regret it. Every heartbeat is a reminder that your dental care plan consists of hope and herbs. Your mother notices. She nods solemnly and pulls out the family's medical kit, a jar of mysterious leaves, some soot, a rag that's seen things, and the village's most trusted remedy, burnt onion and old wine. You apply the mixture to your cheek. It does absolutely nothing except make you smell like a sad tavern. You're sent to see Madame Louette. She's the village healer, midwife tooth puller, and occasional exorcist. Her hut smells like rosemary and mild fear. She greets you with a grin, revealing 3 whole teeth, all in different time zones. You sit on a stool that wobbles like your faith. She pokes your cheek. Then she pokes your tooth with a twig that might be a diagnostic tool, or might just be a stick she found outside. You wince. Definitely cursed, she says. You don't ask for clarification. You just nod, as one does when someone twice your age and half your vision declares dental possession. She offers you 3 options: poultice made of moss and vinegar, chewing bark while humming a saint's hymn, immediate removal with her special spoon. You choose option 1. Bravely, foolishly. She packs your mouth with what feels like compost and gives you a strong herbal tea that tastes like betrayal. You'll feel better, she lies. You stumble home, jaw numb, tongue confused, dignity negotiable. On the way back, it starts to rain. Of course it does. You duck under a tree, a very leaky, judgmental tree. As you sit there, you watch a line of ducks walk across the road like they own the place. One of them stops, looks you dead in the eye, and waddles on. You don't know what it means, but you feel personally attacked. Back at the hut, your mother makes porridge extra soft, mostly water hints of sadness. You sip it carefully, avoiding your left molar like it's a tiny landmine. After dinner, you sit near the hearth and listen to the wind. Your tooth still throbs, but more quietly now, like it knows you're watching. Your mother hands you a strip of cloth. Sleep with this tied around your head, she says. It'll help. You do. You look ridiculous. But it's warm, and that's good enough. You lie down. Outside, the village is quiet. Only the occasional howl of wind, the flap of a loose shutter, and the sound of someone 2 huts over cursing the rain. You drift into sleep, and in your dream, you're smiling, with all your teeth intact, in a place where dentists are gentle and spoons don't pull things out of your skull. You smile wider, then wake up because Jacques dripped into your ear. Of course, but hey, your tooth doesn't hurt more. You call that a win. You wake up to the sound of thunder, not the dramatic kind you see in stories. This is low, tired thunder, the kind that sounds like the sky is groaning because it forgot its to-do list, and now it's raining out of stress. You roll over. Your tooth still aches, but now it's a background character. Today's headline: mud. So much mud. You step outside and sink immediately. The entire village has turned into a pudding, a gray, sloppy, ankle-deep pudding that smells faintly of turnip and livestock judgment. You squish your way to the field, or rather, what used to be the field. Now it's just the swamp formerly known as agriculture. Your boots make a noise every time you lift a foot. Schlurp. It's rhythmic, meditative, annoying. Today's task, reseeding the barley. Again, because last week's seed got washed away in the great mud wave of Tuesday. You carry your burlap sack like it's full of dreams. Wet, disobedient dreams. You scatter the seeds carefully, except they don't scatter. They land, sink, disappear. Your neighbor shouts from his plot, "Maybe next year we should plant fish." You laugh, but only because it's either that or cry into the mud, and your tears would just add to the problem. By midday, it's pouring again. The kind of rain that feels aggressive, like it's trying to prove a point. You duck into the communal shed with 3 others. It's barely shelter. More of a suggestion. Inside, everyone steams. You all smell like mold and despair. Old Gaston offers a piece of jerky. It's more bark than meat, but it's the nicest thing anyone's done for you in a week. You chew it for 17 minutes. It tastes like the word chewy. Outside, the rain does not stop. Someone starts telling a story about a man who once dug a trench so deep he ended up in hell. You don't question the logic. It's raining too hard to argue. By late afternoon, the storm lets up. You squelch home. Your sack is lighter. Your clothes are heavier. Somehow, your left sleeve now holds a slug. You name him Thierry. Back at the hut, your mother is wringing out a blanket that's been wet since May. She says, "The chimney's blocked again." You nod. She says, "The roof's leaking again." You nod again. She says, "Jacques has a friend now." You look up. Sure enough, a new drip. Right next to Jacques, they plink in harmony, one slightly higher pitched, like an optimistic cousin. You warm your hands near the fire. It smells like moss and effort. Dinner is potato skin stew. No potatoes, just the skins. It's technically food. Technically. As you sip, your mother hums something. You hum along, even though you don't know the tune. It doesn't matter. It's warm. Sort of. Afterward, you check the seed sacks. Half of them are soaked. You sigh, then laugh. A dry, mildly unhinged laugh. You're either evolving or unraveling. You lie down in the corner. Jacques and New Jacques drip like a lullaby played by very lazy mice. You close your eyes and dream of sun, of dry socks, of walking through a field without becoming one with it. And somewhere in the distance, Thierry the slug waves goodbye. You smile. You earn that smile. You wake up with hay in your mouth, not metaphorically, actual hay. It seems at some point in the night, you rolled face first into the bedding pile and gave up on boundaries. You spit gently. A small puff of dust and grass drifts upward. Jacques plinks once in sympathy. Outside, the sky is unusually quiet. You peek through the shutter. Mist. Thick, pale mist blankets everything like the world accidentally put on too many wool coats. Trees are half visible. The road looks like it's floating. It's the kind of morning that feels like a secret. You don't have work today, not because the Lord said so, of course, but because the fog is too thick for sewing or mending fences, and the pigs have wisely refused to leave their shelter. So you do something strange. You pause. You stretch slowly. You breathe. You make a cup of weak tea, more leaf-flavored water than actual beverage, and sit by the door. And then something unusual happens. You feel. Not pain. Not cold. Not mud between your toes or rocks in your back or tax dread. Just stillness. You sip the tea and listen. The world is muffled. The sounds are distant. You can hear your own thoughts, and they don't immediately argue back. You remember being younger, running barefoot through this same mist, laughing, imagining dragons behind every tree, believing that fog was where magic lived just outside your reach. You almost see it now. A shape moves through the fog, a child carrying a bundle of twigs. You recognize her. It's Colette's daughter. She waves. You wave back. She disappears into the gray. You exhale. Inside, your mother is repairing a basket. She doesn't speak, but the soft scratch of straw on straw is oddly comforting. You watch her hands move. Steady, tired, familiar. You pick up a scrap of cloth and begin mending a hole in your sleeve. You're not good at it. The stitches are crooked, but they hold. And sometimes, that's all anything needs to do. Later you step outside. The mist is lifting, not all at once, slowly, like a curtain being drawn back uncertain if it's ready. You take a walk. No tools, no tasks, just footsteps on damp ground. The forest path smells like pine and memories. You find a stump and sit. Birdsong filters through the branches. A soft trill, then silence, then another like a response. You imagine it's gossip. A squirrel watches you, decides you're harmless, continues its business. For a moment, you feel invisible. Not in a bad way. In a nothing is expected of me right now way. It's rare. You savor it. Back home, your mother is peeling something. You think it's a parsnip. It could be a root shaped like a question. She smiles when she sees you. Fog day, she says. You nod. Dinner is plain. Broth and a sliver of meat saved from last week's barter. You eat slowly. Not because you're tired, but because today you can. Afterward, you sit by the fire, not talking, not thinking, just being. Jacques and New Jacques plink in slow rhythm, almost melodic. You close your eyes, and for the first time in a long while, you don't fall asleep from exhaustion. You fall asleep because it's peaceful. Because today, the world whispered instead of shouted. Because just for a while, everything stayed exactly where it was supposed to be. And you remembered how to breathe without bracing for impact. That's a kind of victory. You wake up to whispers, not real ones, just that particular kind of rustling wind that slithers through cracks in the shutters and makes you think the walls are gossiping about you. You sit up. The fire's out. The room's colder. Jacques and New Jacques have paused mid-drip, like they're listening too. Something's different. You step outside. The air smells of smoke, not yours, not the neighbor's, but far off a scent carried by the wind, thick and heavy, like a warning wrapped in wood ash. You follow it. The path to the village is uneasy. Neighbors are already outside, whispering, pointing. At the center of it all is old Marthe, sitting on an overturned bucket, like a toad on a throne. She's telling the story, loudly. They say she spoke to the storm, said the name of it like she knew it. And then the lightning hit her chimney straight. Everyone gasps, except you. You blink. She's talking about Mère Elise, the widow who lives at the edge of the woods, the one with too many cats, not enough teeth, and a garden that grows suspiciously well in terrible soil. You've never thought she was a witch. But then again, you've also never not thought she was a witch. You inch closer. She wears that scarf every day, someone hisses. Same one. Red. Like the devil's napkin. There's a pause. Then someone else says, she looked at my cow last week. Now the cow walks backward. That gets a murmur of agreement. You want to ask, are we sure the cow wasn't just confused? But this is not a time for logic. You glance toward the woods. Smoke still rising from her chimney. So at least she's alive. The priest arrives. People part like cheese from bread on a hot day. He listens, nods, frowns harder. Then he says the 5 most dangerous words in a medieval village. We must investigate. For safety. Your stomach drops. Not because you're superstitious, but because you remember last time someone was investigated for safety. Let's just say her goat ended up married to a log in a purification ritual, and she had to sleep in the barn for 6 months. The crowd follows the priest. You don't. Not right away. You head home first, grab some bread, wrap it in cloth. Then you quietly walk around the village and into the woods. You find Mère Elise sitting on a stool, surrounded by 3 cats and a smoking chimney. Her hair is wild, her eyes sharper than yours. She sees you and says, "They're coming." You nod. She shrugs. "Let them. I didn't ask the storm to kiss my roof." You hand her the bread. She takes it, breaks it in half, hands you the bigger piece. You both eat in silence. Eventually she asks, "You scared of me?" You think about it, then shake your head. "I'm scared of people who get bored." She laughs. It's hoarse and warm and very unwitch-like. You leave just as the crowd crests the hill. You don't say anything. Just return to your hut and sit by the cold fire. A few hours later, the priest comes by. "She's been warned," he says. "We'll watch her. For now." You nod. Pretend not to see the half loaf of bread in your basket. That night, the sky is clear. No fog, no whispers. Just stars far bright and completely uninterested in village politics. You lie down. The leaks drip gently. The cats meow in the distance, and you dream of backward cows and brave old women and a world where kindness doesn't need to be hidden. At least not all the time. You wake up to a knock, not a knock on your door, a knock on your roof. You freeze. It's not raining, not windy. And unless Jacques has taken up carpentry, that's not normal. You step outside, and there it is, a letter, tied with twine, nestled gently beside a rock and a dead beetle. Someone clearly worked hard on the presentation. You untie it. The handwriting is clumsy. The ink is faint. The spelling is optimistic at best, but the message is clear. Your cousin Jean made it to the city. He's a scribe now. Says he has shoes and wages. Real ones. You stare at it, Jean. Your gangly, dirt-covered cousin who once tried to ride a pig like a nobleman's horse. That Jean. He's in the city. He has shoes. Your brain spins. City life. Streets made of stone. Bread that doesn't break teeth. Water that doesn't wiggle. You fold the letter slowly, like it's something sacred. All day you're distracted. You dig in the fields with less vigor. You drop your hoe twice. Alain asks what's wrong, and you say, "Nothing," even though your brain is somewhere between daydream and existential reevaluation. Your mother notices. She doesn't say anything. But at dinner, she gives you the last piece of carrot without comment. That's basically a full emotional monologue. You eat slowly, taste everything, even the weird part of the stew that might be boiled moss. Later that night, you pull out a scrap of parchment. You try to write back. Dear Jean, you begin. Then pause. What do you even say? Do you ask how he did it? Do you beg for help? Do you tell him about Jacques, the ceiling leaks, and the witch investigation? Instead, you write, glad you're well. Do your shoes match? Then because you're you, you add a drawing of a smiling pig and sign it with a thumbprint. In the morning, you give it to a trader heading north. Do you know Jean, the scribe, you ask? The trader grunts. Don't know anyone who was a scribe and didn't regret it. Encouraging. Still, you hand it over. All day, your work feels lighter. Your shoulders ache less. The mud is still mud, but maybe it's temporary mud. That night, your mother says, if you had the chance, would you leave? You freeze. The fire crackles. The stew simmers. Jacques drips like a slow clock. You shrug. Maybe, if there's a path. She nods. You'd miss the roof. You smile. Only a little. She tosses a log on the fire, and for a moment, there's peace. Not because life is easy, but because somewhere out there, a pig-riding cousin has become a man with ink-stained hands and matching footwear. And that means, maybe just maybe, the world is bigger than mud and barley. You lie down, staring at the beams overhead. You imagine Jean with paper, with pens, with people who call him Sir. Then you fall asleep and dream of cities, of libraries, of warm boots and cool stone, of someone reading your letter and laughing at the pig, and maybe writing back. You wake up to shouting, not angry shouting, excited shouting, which in your experience is far more suspicious. You roll off the straw mat, stretch your back. It responds with the usual symphony of medieval percussion, and poke your head out the door. A crowd is gathered near the path to the woods. You squint. At first, you see only the backs of heads and the occasional flutter of a chicken escaping the commotion. But then you catch the word messenger. Now that's rare. Messengers don't visit peasants. They visit people with titles, debts, and decorative doorways. But today, apparently, someone made a wrong turn or a deeply charitable mistake. You shuffle closer, rubbing sleep from your eyes, trying to decide if this is the kind of excitement that leads to bread or burning. And there he is, a boy no older than 15, riding a mule that looks emotionally retired, holding a leather satchel like it contains royal secrets, and/or someone's laundry list. He clears his throat. Hear ye, he announces, which earns exactly 1 snort from Gaston and 0 respect from the mule. A decree from the Baron of Montreval. You blink. That's 3 villages over. A place with walls, with markets, with a roofed church that doesn't leak unless you ask it nicely. The messenger continues. There is to be a fair, a harvest gathering. 3 days hence. All surrounding villages are invited. People murmur. A few gasp. A fair. The last fair was 8 years ago. You were still small enough to sit on your father's shoulders. Someone gave you half a pear, and you swore it was the best thing you'd ever tasted. The messenger fumbles through his satchel. Also, he pauses clearly, struggling with pronunciation. What is this? A contest. That gets everyone's attention. A writing contest, he says proudly, to be judged by scribes of the manor. The winner receives a silver coin and a place in the Baron's service. You blink, then laugh. out loud. A peasant writing. You haven't seen proper ink in a year. Your last letter was written in berry juice on a potato sack. You signed it with a thumbprint that accidentally resembled a chicken's foot. But still, a writing contest. Your brain doesn't let it go. Later back at the hut, your mother is kneading dough with the intensity of someone punishing the past. You tell her about the fair, about the contest. She nods slowly. You've always liked stories, she says. I've always liked telling stories, you reply. Not writing them. Writing's for people with parchment that doesn't smell like turnips. She wipes her hands and rummages through a basket in the corner. From beneath a pile of old fabric and dried herbs, she pulls out a small bundle. It's wrapped in cloth. You recognize it. Jean's old writing slate. He left it behind when he went to the city. You'd forgotten. She hands it to you. Use the back. The front's got drawings of pigs wearing hats. You laugh, then stop, because she's serious. So you sit and write. You scratch with a stub of charcoal trying to make your letters look less like terrified spiders. You write about the fair from 8 years ago, about the pear, about your father's shoulders, about the warmth of bread given to you by a stranger with more wrinkles than teeth. You write it all. That night, you read it aloud to your mother. She listens in silence. At the end, she says, "It sounds like you," which is somehow better than praise. 3 days later, the village heads to the fair. It's early morning. You walk alongside neighbors who've washed behind their ears and polished their clogs. Children carry baskets. Chickens are tucked under arms like sleepy luggage. The path winds through woods and fields and places you've only seen in dreams. The sky is clear. The air smells of damp grass and pastry hope. When you arrive, it's overwhelming. Stalls everywhere. Bread and meat and cheese so strong it sings. Jugglers, dancers, a man walking on stilts who tips his hat to you with the solemnity of a bishop. You find the scribe's tent. It's near the chapel, next to a stack of scrolls and a goat that keeps trying to eat the entries. You hand yours in with shaking fingers. The clerk doesn't look up. Winner will be posted before sundown, he says. You nod, then float away on trembling knees. The rest of the day is a blur. You eat a meat pie that might contain hope and definitely contains something unidentifiable. You pet a dog wearing a scarf. You watch a woman carve faces into apples and sell them as tiny saints. And then it's time. You gather near the scroll. A crowd forms. A man steps forward, clears his throat. The winner of the Baron's writing contest is a pause. You hold your breath. Jean of Villon, now serving as scribe in Montreval. You exhale. Laugh. Of course it's Jean. The man continues. An honorable mention goes to unnamed author of The Pear and the Shoulder. You blink. Whoever you are, he adds, your handwriting is dreadful, but your heart is true. The crowd claps. You don't step forward. You just smile. Quietly, softly, because for the first time in your life, your words were read, heard, seen. That night, back at the hut, you tuck the slate under your mat. You still don't have shoes, still don't have parchment, but you have a story. And now, you know it matters. You wake up before sunrise, not because of Jacques or the chickens, or even your back, which for once is only mildly rebellious. No, Today you wake because something inside you stirs first. You're excited. You don't get to say that often. The morning is unusually quiet. Mist floats low across the village path, and the sky is a shade of lavender you've only ever seen in your mother's weaving, usually by accident. You roll up the mat, tuck the writing slate underneath it, like a treasure, and step outside. The fair is over. The tents are gone. The performers have packed up their juggling sticks and tiny Saint apples, but something lingers. Not a smell, not a sound, a feeling. Like the village grew a centimeter taller overnight. You head to the well. The water is cold crisp and tastes slightly less like snail than usual. Henry greets you on the path, nodding solemnly, like you've both just returned from war. Heard you wrote a story, he says. You shrug. He leans closer. My daughter says it made her cry. You blink. From sadness, he grins. From wanting a pair, you laugh. That might be the best review you'll ever get. Back home, your mother is boiling porridge. It smells like oats and dust and a hint of optimism. She doesn't mention the contest. She doesn't have to. There's something new in her smile, like she's seeing the walls of the hut differently. Less like a prison, more like a starting line. After breakfast, you help her gather herbs. It's a simple task, cutting lavender tying bundles, swatting away bees who take your presence as a personal offense. You work quietly, but your mind doesn't stop. You think about Jean, about city walls, about ink that doesn't smudge and paper that doesn't crumble. You wonder if stories can travel further than your feet ever will. As the sun rises higher, the path to the fields calls you back. The barley is sprouting again, green, stubborn, and full of unearned hope. You hoe around the edges, gently, like brushing hair back from a sleeping child's face. It's not glamorous. You're still wearing one patch boot and one invention made of twine and bark. But your hands move with a rhythm you've known since before you could name your fingers. At midday, you break for lunch, half a turnip and a heel of bread. You chew slowly, letting the breeze fill the gaps between bites. Then you hear it. Footsteps on the path. You look up. A man in a dusty robe, clean boots, a pouch at his side. You recognize the emblem, the Baron's courier. He stops in front of you, pulls out a folded scrap of parchment. You're the author of the pear story, he asks. You nod. He hands you the paper. From the manor, he says, then turns and walks away, like he didn't just drop a boulder on your chest. You unfold it slowly. The ink is neat, the seal broken, the words official. It reads, "Your words reached us. We believe your voice may serve the realm. If willing, report to the manor gate by next full moon. A position of copyist may be available. Bring your hand. Bring your stories. Bring yourself." You don't move. The letter flutters in the breeze, like it's unsure whether to be real or not. You sit down hard on the edge of the barley patch. A beetle climbs onto your boot. You don't even notice. Your mother finds you there later. She reads the letter twice, then again. She says nothing, just puts her hand on your shoulder. That night, you don't eat much. Your appetite was replaced by a small storm in your stomach. What does this mean? A job? A chance? A different life? You stare at your straw mat, at the ceiling beams, at Jacques, who drips once softly, like applause. You pack slowly over the next few days. One shirt, one bowl, the slate, a small wrapped bundle of dried herbs your mother insists will keep you steady. You try not to feel like you're abandoning the hut or her. She tries not to look like she's already missing you. On the morning of departure, she braids your hair. You're far too old for that now, technically, but neither of you says anything. At the village gate, you turn to see your neighbors gathered. Gaston, who smells like garlic, and regret, gives you a thumbs up. Alain waves with both hands. Even the goat nods. Your mother says one thing very quietly. Write something better than turnip stew. You nod, eyes stinging, and step onto the path. It's not grand. It's just dirt and rocks and the occasional wandering duck. But it's leading somewhere new. And for the first time in your life, you're not just surviving, you're becoming. That night you camp under a tree. The stars are loud. The wind is soft. Your dreams are full of pears and ink and shoes that match. You sleep with the letter tucked inside your tunic next to your heart. You don't know what the manor will be like. You don't know if they'll keep their promise. You don't know if you'll stay. But you do know this. You have a story, and it's only just begun. And now the fire has faded. The hut is still. The barley field sleeps beneath a blanket of stars, and Jacques, dear Jacques, drips no more. You've walked through mud and mist, danced at a forgotten feast, stitched your sleeves with crooked hope, and dreamed through hunger. You've seen fear dressed as firewood and joy hiding in half a pear. You've carried silence like it was your birthright and laughter like it was contraband. You wrote anyway, and somehow that made it real. Maybe you never had boots that matched. Maybe your words were scratched on slate and stained in beet juice. But someone read them. Someone heard you. And even if you're still just one voice among fields and fog and firewood dreams, you mattered. You matter. So tonight, let yourself rest. Let the earth hold your weight without question. Let your breath come slowly, like clouds drifting across a morning sky. Let the stories wait. They'll still be here when you wake. And if this small tale made your eyes soften, or your lips curve, or your chest feel a little warmer in the dark, then stay a while. So if you'd like more sleepy journeys like this, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy the quiet, quirky corners we explore here. And if you're still awake, just barely feel free to leave a comment below with your location and the time. It's always beautiful knowing who else wandered here tonight. That's the story. For tonight, may your dreams be filled with wonder and peace. Hey guys, tonight we're going to light a candle and walk quietly through the halls of medieval fortune, where a shepherd can become a noble and a goat might just be your financial advisor. Because tonight we begin our journey through the greatest rags to riches stories in medieval history. These aren't fairy tales. They're real tales, real people, real turnips, real political marriages built on awkward introductions and soup stains. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake by the end, leave a comment with your location and the time so we can all marvel at how many of us are falling asleep, thinking about goats and medieval tax brackets. Now dim, the lights maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin the evening, barefoot, standing ankle deep in wet grass, holding a crooked shepherd's staff in one hand and a crust of questionable bread in the other. You smell like wool, and not the expensive kind. You are 12, maybe 13. No one knows your birthday, not even you. Time in your village is measured by lambs born and grandmothers buried. Your name is something simple. Alain. Maybe Hugo. Something you could shout across a windy field without losing your teeth. You spend most of your waking hours watching sheep that are not yours, and frowning at clouds that seem a little too ambitious. Your clothes are patched. Your dinner is boiled grain. And your dreams are shaped like warm shoes and roofs that don't leak. One day, while trying to keep your favorite sheep, he's got one ear and a limp away from a cliff edge, you hear something. Voices. You duck behind a bush. Sheep, of course, do not duck. They stand there chewing moss like they own the place. Through the mist, you see them, two men on horseback cloaks, lined with fur swords, so shiny you can see your future in the reflection. And it mostly involves back pain. They're arguing. Something about a border dispute. A shipment of silver. A letter gone missing. One of them is holding a scroll like it might explode, and then he drops it right into the mud. They don't notice. They gallop off, continuing their argument about who insulted whose aunt. You stare at the scroll. It's tied in red ribbon, thick parchment, smells faintly of beeswax and arrogance. You pick it up, wipe off the mud, and after a solid 5 minutes of pretending you aren't about to open a noble's private mail, you untie it. You can't read all of it, but you recognize the name of the local lord, and the seal is still intact. This is important. Like people lose fingers over this important. You do the most dangerous thing a poor child can do. You walk to the manor gate. The guards eye you like you're a suspicious turnip. You hold up the scroll. They take it. They laugh. You get ready to be turned away. But then a steward appears. He reads it. His eyes widen, and then he does something strange. He waves you inside. The manor smells like rosemary wax and furniture you're not allowed to touch. You stand awkwardly by the fire-dripping mud onto a fur rug. The Lord enters. He's not tall, but his hat is. He looks you up and down like you're a puzzle made entirely of dust and hay. He says, "Where did you get this?" You explain. You don't lie, because you're too tired to invent anything more interesting than the truth. He stares. Then he says, "What's your name?" You tell him. He nods. Then gestures to the steward. Give him food and boots, real ones. You blink. You don't know what's happening, but by nightfall, you're sitting at the edge of the servant's kitchen eating hot stew and wearing the stiffest boots you've ever owned. They creak like they're judging your entire bloodline. Over the next week, you're kept around. Someone needs help mucking the stables. Someone else needs a message run to the blacksmith. You don't complain. You move quietly. You listen. You're good at listening. One day, you overhear a scribe complaining. The Lord's youngest son can't remember his letters. They're looking for someone to help. You volunteer. They laugh. Then stop laughing when you recite the alphabet backward while peeling carrots. You're given a slate, a quill, lessons. You learn fast. Too fast. One day, the steward says, "You've got a head on you. Rare thing. Don't waste it." 5 years later, you're not watching sheep. You're writing scrolls, carrying letters, advising. You still miss your favorite sheep. But now, you eat 3 meals a day and sleep in a bed that doesn't smell like mildew and bad decisions. The Lord's daughter calls you Master Alan now. You don't quite know what that means, but when you walk through the manor gates, boots clicking like a drumbeat of becoming, you understand something. You didn't find the scroll. You found a beginning. You wake up before the sun, but this time, it's not because of cold toes or snoring pigs. It's because you're excited. Your hands are blistered. Your back hums with the soft ache of being young and overworked. But you don't care, because today, you're going to the forge, not as a messenger, not to sweep ash or carry coal buckets, but to learn. You never thought you'd say this, but you're genuinely looking forward to metal and fire. And it all started with a pair of shoes. Not yours, of course. You're still wearing hand-me-down boots from a foot that was definitely wider, but it was his shoes, the Baron's second son. You saw them when he visited the manor from his training. Bright steel toes, engraved patterns laces made of waxed leather heels that clicked like pride. You stared too long. He noticed, but instead of mocking you, as was tradition, he said, "You want to know who made these?" You nodded. He gave you a name, so you went. And now, every morning after scribe duties and scroll deliveries, you sneak off for an hour or two to the blacksmith's shed on the edge of the estate. It smells like soot iron and potential. Today, the smith hands you a horseshoe. Bend it, he says. You try. Fail. Try again. Fail louder. He laughs. Good. You're not supposed to do it easily. If you did, I'd worry the metal was made from melted spoons and wishful thinking. You spend the morning heating, hammering, shaping. At first, your hands protest. They're scholar's hands now, quill soft. But you ignore the blisters because something in you wants to make things that last. At lunch, you sit on a barrel outside eating a chunk of rye bread and dried pear. Across from you, the smith sharpens a blade with the calm of someone who's never questioned who they are. You're not bad with your eyes, he says. You look up. Most boys swing the hammer before they've looked at the angle. You watch first. That matters. You nod, chewing. You want to make shoes like those noble ones, he asks. You hesitate. Not just the shoes. He grins. The step that comes with them. You smile. Exactly. By your third visit, he lets you heat the coals. By your fifth, he lets you finish a basic buckle. You mess it up. One side curves inward, like it's embarrassed to be metal, but he doesn't shout. He just says, again. And you do. Over and over, until your hands remember what your brain forgets. Weeks pass. Then one afternoon, a messenger arrives at the forge. The Baron's horse threw a shoe. Emergency. The smith isn't there. Off visiting his daughter in the next village. The stable boy is panicking. And you step forward because you've seen it done a dozen times now. You know where the nails go. You know the way the hoof should be cleaned. You remember how to hold the file without grinding the edge like an amateur. So you do it. Carefully. Slowly. Without flair. When you're done, the steward stares. You did that. You nod cautiously. He inspects the hoof, raises an eyebrow, and says, "Clean work. Report to the stables tomorrow." That night the smith returns. You expect him to be angry. You acted without permission. You touched his tools. You risked his reputation. Instead, he claps you on the back, hard enough to knock you into next week. You did it clean. You nod. Then you're ready. You blink. Ready for what he pulls a small package from the shelf. Inside, a pair of steel-toed boots. Not engraved. Not noble. But strong. Balanced. Made for you. You've got a brain, he says. You've got hands. But now you've got shoes. You stare at them. Put them on. They fit like they've been waiting. From that day on, you split your time between parchment and iron. You fix things. You build things. You carry messages and confidence and on occasion, other people's ambitions. Word spreads. One day, the Baron's second son comes riding through again. He dismounts, points to your boots. "Where'd you get those, you grin?" "I made them." He raises his eyebrows. "You work steel and ink." You nod. He pauses. We could use someone like you. A week later, you're riding to the city. Not on a cart, on a horse. Yours? Not quite, but assigned to you. You pass the village where you once picked stones from barley fields. The shepherds still wave. You wave back. They don't recognize your boots, but you do, and that's enough. The city smells like ambition and sewage, but mostly ambition. You arrive just before dusk, your boots still dusted with country road and mild disbelief. The city gates loom ahead, carved stone flanked by guards in matching tunics, who glance at you, then back to their conversation about someone's misbehaving cousin. You pass through without trouble. Inside, the world feels louder, faster, closer. Everything is stone iron, steam clatter. Carts rattle by, chickens weave between boots. Children shout in half-songs as they chase each other through alleys that smell like spice and spilled ale. It's overwhelming. It's perfect. You're assigned a room above the tannery. It's small, smells aggressively leathery. The window is optimistic. It lets in more pigeons than air. But there's a bed, a table, a candle stub, and you're alone, which strangely is the best part. You report to the scribe's chamber the next morning. It's housed inside a guild hall so wide it echoes when someone sneezes. Your task, copying legal forms, ledgers occasionally love poems disguised as inventory. You keep your head down. You write clearly. You ask smart questions. And soon enough, someone notices. The head scribe, Master Roland. A man who looks like he's been alive since parchment was invented, waves you over. You're the one who fixes horseshoes, too, he asks. You nod. He eyes you, then gestures to a pile of dusty scrolls. Translate these. Latin, sloppy Latin. You nod again, even though inside you're thinking, I hope I remember the difference between dominus and donkey. You do. Mostly. That evening exhausted, you visit the lower market. You pass herb stalls, fabric weavers, a man yelling about miracle vinegar, and a woman who sells nothing but buttons. She calls out, You look like someone who's lost a fastener. You smile. Only my dignity. She laughs. We don't sell that here. Try the church. You buy a small cloth pouch anyway, not because you need it, because it's the first thing you've bought with your own coin. The next morning, Master Roland sends you to assist the apothecary. It's supposed to be a temporary assignment. The apothecary Mistress Eleonora is not what you expected. She's younger than you imagined. Wears too many rings, smells like mint and worry, talks to her shelves when she's upset. You like her immediately. She gives you a pestle, a pile of dried something, and says, Don't mess it up. You try not to. She watches you grind herbs with the precision of someone who once measured river rocks just for fun. You've got quiet hands, she says. Is that good in medicine? It's everything. You stay longer than expected. A week becomes 2. You learn to bind wounds, mix tinctures, memorize which mushrooms are breakfast and which are not breakfast. Then one day, panic. A carriage rolls into the square. A nobleman stumbles out, coughing, wheezing cheeks, flushed like he's been kissed by fire and regret. His steward rushes in yelling something about poisoned stew or a very disloyal chicken. Eleonora reacts fast, but she hands the vial to you. Give him this, she says slowly. Your hands don't shake. You do as instructed. The nobleman swallows the brew, gags, then breathes easier. You check his pulse, clean the vomit off your boots with your sleeve, unfortunately, and nod. He's going to live. The steward is baffled. That was fast. You shrug. The poison was obvious. He smelled like nightshade and bad decisions. The noble laughs, coughs, laughs again. Later back in the shop, Eleonora hands you a small pouch, inside silver. More than you've ever held. You saved a lord, she says. That's worth at least 2 loaves of bread. You try to thank her. She waves it off. You're good with plants, good with people, and I hate paperwork. You blink. You want me to stay? She raises an eyebrow. You prefer scrolls and ink dust. You think of the cold ink, the cramped script, Master Roland's sneeze echoing through eternity. You smile. I prefer stories I can hold in my hand. She nods. You're hired. That night, you sit on the rooftop. The stars peek through city haze. The wind smells like rosemary coal, and maybe just, maybe possibility. You think of the village, of sheep, of scrolls, of shoes, and you realize you didn't climb the ladder. You grew sideways, quietly, unexpectedly, like moss on stone, or a story nobody thought was worth telling until it saved someone's life. You wake up to the sound of arguing pigeons and an exploding jar of dried thyme. It's a typical morning in Eleonora's apothecary. The pigeons live in the alley just outside your window and seem to be locked in an eternal custody battle over a bent spoon. The jar exploded because Eleonora decided to organize the shelf by mood and bump the top row with her elbow. You step over shattered clay, sweep up leaves that may or may not be medicine, and start boiling water. You're not quite an apprentice. Not officially. But you've been here long enough that even the mice know not to steal from your side of the room. Eleonora's already muttering about needing more hands and fewer men who sneeze into healing powders. You offer to fetch supplies from the market. She hands you a list that looks less like a shopping note and more like a coded message from a bored wizard. Elderflower, beeswax willow bark, powdered horn elk. Not goat last time was a disaster. You set off. The streets are muddy from last night's rain. The sky is somewhere between gray and more gray. But your boots hold firm. The ones you made. You remind yourself of that every time you hear a splash that doesn't reach your socks. At the market, you haggle like someone who's paid for wormwood 3 times and once received shredded spinach instead. You know everyone now. The lavender lady, the wax man, the suspicious mushroom seller named Gert. You buy extra beeswax. Not because you need it. Because Gert looks sad today. By the time you return, there's a customer waiting. Well, customer is generous. She's wearing noble robes badly. The colors are expensive, but the stitching says I bribed a seamstress and told no one. She leans on the counter like it owes her rent and says, I require a draft. Eleonora nudges you forward. You raise an eyebrow. For... She lowers her voice like she's telling you her favorite gossip. A man. Ah, you guide her to the romantic disasters section of the shelf. You've seen this before. Young nobles who think perfume is a love spell and want potions that promise devotion, abs, and conversational skill. You hand her a small vial, a calming tonic laced with citrus and confidence. She sniffs it. Will this make him love me? You smile gently. No, but it'll help you not care as much. She stares, then slowly grins. Sold. After she leaves, Eleonora pats your shoulder. You've got a gift. For honesty? For not getting slapped while being honest. Later that week, you're invited to a gathering. Not the upper-class kind, with embroidered napkins and quiet loathing. This one is in the back of a candlemaker's workshop. A few scribes, a few herbalists, a bard with an impressively awful lute. You go, because Eleonora insists. It's good to be reminded there are people outside the shop, she says, even if they're disappointing. You bring a small jar of dried lemon balm as a thank you gift. Someone else brings bread. The bard brings a song called My Mother Was a Turnip, and So Was Her Soup. It's terrible. You love it. You talk with a young man named Oswin who works in the city archives. He's read your writing, recognized your annotations on a translated scroll about fish trade. He says, you write like someone who doesn't know they're allowed to lie. You thank him, even though you're not sure it was a compliment. On your way home, someone stops you. A tall figure, hooded, wearing boots that cost more than your entire shelf of ointments. He says your name, not the casual way, not like a neighbor. He says it like it's printed in a ledger somewhere important. He hands you a scroll, sealed, marked with the insignia of the city council. You're requested, he says, for a matter of discretion. You blink. He vanishes. You open the scroll under the shop lantern. It's an invitation to serve as advisor temporarily on a city matter regarding trade routes and counterfeit medicine. You read it twice, then a third time, just to be sure it doesn't change into a menu. You look up. Eleonora is watching you, arms crossed. Well, you show her. She stares, then nods, slowly, like a baker checking if bread is rising. She doesn't smile, but she does say, I hope they know you still smell like mint and mistakes. You prepare to leave at sunrise. It's not forever, just a few days. But it's the first time you've left the apothecary for something official since arriving. You pack your satchel, tuck in a few emergency tonics, one extra pair of socks, a ribbon-wrapped bundle of dried thyme for luck not seasoning, and you step out into the city as someone requested, not stumbled upon, not accidentally useful, but invited. And for someone who used to count turnips for fun, that feels like magic. You arrive at the council hall just after dawn, breathing mist and something that might be dignity. You're early, very early, but better that than being escorted out for lateness before you've even stepped in. The guards at the gate barely glance up. You show them the scroll with the seal. They read it, squint, then nod you through with a universal gesture, for I don't get paid enough to question scrolls. Inside, the world shifts. This is not your apothecary. This is not your rooftop garden. This is marble and velvet and whispers that never echo because important people don't like their secrets bouncing off stone walls. A steward leads you through 3 hallways, 2 wrong doors, and a staircase so polished you briefly consider crawling for safety. Finally, you're shown into a room with a long table and exactly one person seated at it. A woman. Her robes are deep navy, her collar high, her gaze immediate. She looks like she hasn't blinked since last Tuesday. You're the apothecary's assistant, she says. You try to correct her. You're something else now. But the words get shy in your throat. So you nod. Good, she replies. We need someone who understands medicine and lies. That's comforting. She introduces herself as Dame Beatrice, a council advisor. You suspect advisor means the person who actually solves things, while everyone else debates fruit baskets. She slides a small wooden box across the table. 3 nobles fell ill, she says. Different symptoms, same dinner party. You raise an eyebrow. Did the chicken confess? She almost smiles. No, but the cook fled, which is usually an admission. Inside the box are 3 vials each, carefully sealed and labeled. One has a yellow tint, another cloudy green. The third is clear, but smells like betrayal. You sniff each. You weigh them in your hand. Tilt them gently. Finally, you look up. This isn't food poisoning. Beatrice leans forward. Go on. It's medicinal. You point to the cloudy green. That one's a tonic used to lower fever. But if taken with wine, she nods. It amplifies the effects, causes dizziness, hallucinations, and vomiting, you add. Lots of vomiting. You point to the second vial. This one's from valerian root, but it's not pure. Someone diluted it with something resinous, maybe pine. And the last, you hold it up to the light. Nothing wrong with it. In fact, it's a sleep aid. One of mine. Beatrice blinks. Yours? You nod. Eleonora makes it. We bottle it in small batches and use that exact seal. She frowns. So either your shop sold it or someone copied it. You already know the answer. Eleonora only hands that tonic to trusted customers, and she logs every single one in her journal in handwriting so sharp it could peel apples. You say, "May I return to the shop?" Check the ledger. Beatrice nods. Take this. She hands you a token carved with the council's emblem. If anyone questions, you show them that and act extremely tired. You smile. I'm always tired. Back at the shop, Eleonora doesn't flinch when you barge in. She already has the ledger open. She says 3 nobles, 1 sleep tonic, sold 2 weeks ago to a man with perfect teeth and too many questions. You scan the name. Alaric de Marne. The name rings a bell, one of those rich families whose scandals are whispered like bedtime stories for gossips. You head back to the council with the ledger in hand. Beatrice reviews it, nods once. We'll handle the noble, she says. You handled the truth. She pours you a drink, not wine, but something herbal and sharp. You sip. It tastes like ginger and new beginnings. You have options, you know, she says, setting the cup down. We could use someone like you. Not full time. But when things go sideways, you blink. You want me to be your part-time lie detector. She smiles. Something like that. You don't say yes. You don't say no. You just smile and say, do I get a chair that squeaks impressively? Later you walk through the city. The air is cool. Lanterns flicker on balconies. The bakery is closing, but the scent of cinnamon lingers, like it doesn't want to leave. You stop by the bridge. Watch the river crawl past the stone arches, like it's remembering something. A boy passes by on a cart. He's delivering candles. You were him once. You still kind of are, but also not. Because today, you weren't just someone who noticed a bad smell, or a weird plant, or a strange vial. You were someone who saw through it. You uncovered a lie with nothing but your nose, your hands, and the memory of boiling too many sleep tonics during flu season. You walk home slowly. Your satchel swings at your side. It's heavier now, not from scrolls or samples, from possibility, and maybe from a slightly overripe apple you stole from the council's waiting room. Some things never change. You wake up the next morning with the apple still in your satchel and the distinct sense that the city now knows your name. Not in the famous way, no one's writing songs about the apprentice who smelled poison and wore lopsided boots. But people nod at you differently. The stable boy at the corner bakery offers you a second roll without asking. Mistress Eleonora grunts. Didn't burn anything yesterday. Keep the streak alive. You hum as you restock the jars. Life is still ordinary, but the air around you feels less tight. Then it happens. A courier shows up at the door, breathless, holding a parcel wrapped in oilskin. For the apothecary's assistant, he says. You open it slowly. Inside a finely bound book. Leather cover. Gold-pressed lettering. No note. No signature. Just a small emblem on the inside cover. You recognize it, the personal seal of Dame Beatrice. The book is titled Medicinal Applications and Misapplications, a treatise for the moderately curious. You run your fingers along the cover like it might disappear. Eleonora peers over your shoulder, grunts in approval, then says, "Don't drool on it." You spend that night reading by candlelight. The diagrams are exquisite. The footnotes are dry and funny in the way that only bored nobles with sharp quills can manage. You learn 3 new ways to treat stomach aches and 1 new way to make your tea taste like old leather. You don't sleep until the candle burns itself out. The next few weeks blur into rhythm. You work. You listen. You mix. You measure. You send 2 more patients to the council hall, both suspected of pretending to faint for attention. One was a merchant who overdosed on parsley. The other, a bored teen who drank a mystery tonic on a dare. You become the kind of person people come to for answers and questions. One afternoon, a child brings you a note. It's scribbled on parchment, sealed with wax shaped like a rose. Inside, come to the north gate. At sunset, wear a cloak. No signature, no explanation. Eleonora reads it over your shoulder. She squints. Could be a trap. You raise an eyebrow. Could be a date. She snorts. Same thing. Still you go. Because you've followed worse leads than mysterious letters sealed with questionable romance. At the gate, you find a carriage. And standing beside it, Oswin, the archive boy. Only he's not in dusty robes now. He's in blue velvet. His hair's combed. He looks taller. He's not taller. It's the posture. Surprised, he asks. You nod. Entirely. He opens the door. Come on, I want to show you something. You consider saying no. You consider pretending you're busier than you are. But curiosity tugs harder than hesitation. Inside the carriage, he tells you, my uncle's in charge of the West Records Division. He heard about your council work. Wants to meet you. You blink. Why? Because you read footnotes. Oswin says, and didn't fall asleep. The ride is smooth. The city rolls by in golden shadows. Eventually, you stop in front of a building you've passed before, but never entered. It's plain from the outside, modest. But inside, endless shelves, ladders on wheels, maps bigger than bed sheets, scrolls wrapped in ribbon, books older than gossip. You're led to a quiet chamber where an older man with owl-shaped spectacles squints at you like he's already halfway through a background check. Oswin introduces you. The man nods. I hear you spotted a false signature on a merchant's tax tonic, he says. You shrug. It smelled like spinach. He chuckles. You want part-time work? Sorting through our medicinal archives. Finding the lies between the lines. You don't answer immediately. You're still busy staring at the wall of annotated herb journals. He takes your silence as interest. Good, he says. We'll start with a trial. You walk out with ink on your fingers, a key to the archives, and a job title you didn't know existed, Scent reader second tier. Back home, Eleonora pretends not to be impressed, but she makes soup that night with real onions. And she doesn't complain once about the noise from your excited page turning. You go to sleep with a book on your chest, a jar of lemon balm on your table, and a letter draft you're writing to Jean back in the village. You tell him I still wake up early, but now it's not to feed animals. It's because there's something to chase. You smile as you write it, because you know he'll understand. He was always good at chasing things, especially trouble. And now so are you. You wake up in the middle of the night because the book you fell asleep with has lodged itself firmly into your spine. It's not the worst way to wake up. You've been nudged awake by spilled tinctures and angry pigeon, and once memorably, Eleanor throwing a stale biscuit at your head. This is almost gentle. You shift, sit up, and stretch. Your room is lit only by moonlight pooling across the windowsill. The city outside is hushed and glowing, like someone dusted every rooftop with silver. You don't go back to sleep. Instead, you open the little drawer beside your bed, pull out a fresh scrap of parchment, and keep writing to Jean. You tell him about the key to the archive, about the footnotes that reference herbs extinct for 3 generations, about the misfiled scroll you found yesterday that turned out to be a love letter disguised as a grain inventory. You pause before adding, and someone called me master today by mistake. I didn't correct them. I just smiled and helped them find the section on digestive issues. You leave that line in. The next morning, Eleonora says you're not needed at the shop. Go, she says. File something. Smell something old. You're not mine every day now. She says it gruffly, but you catch the corners of her mouth twitching. So you go to the archive. Your key clicks in the door. The lock is smooth-oiled recently. Someone's taking care of this place. It matters. Inside, it's cool and quiet. Not silent. There's always someone coughing in the corner. Always the rustle of paper. But it's the kind of quiet that feels alive, like thinking has a sound. You check in with Oswin. He hands you a small stack. These came in from the southern outpost, he says. Water damaged. A few are legible. Maybe. You spend hours hunched over them. One scroll crumbles when you breathe too hard. Another reveals a symbol you recognize used in older medicinal texts to warn of dangerous cross-contamination. You isolate that one, and then you find something strange. A copied recipe. Nothing unusual. Honey willow bark, crushed clove, but the measurements are off. Not just inaccuracy, intentional skewing. Just enough to dull the effect without making it obvious. You flag it. Take it to the head archivist. He frowns. Forgery. You nod. Or misdirection. Could be someone was hiding ingredients. Or protecting knowledge. He looks at the scroll again. You found this how? You shrug. It didn't smell right. He laughs. We've got scribes who can't see that, and you're sniffing your way to truth. Remarkable. You don't blush. Not really. But your ears definitely warm. The archivist gives you a new stack. You've got an eye for patterns, he says, and a nose for nonsense. That becomes your new title, unofficially. Nose for nonsense. You take it with pride. Later that week, you're invited to a council dinner. It's not fancy, just roasted meat, flatbread, and mulled cider. But it's the first time you're seated beside scribes and herbalists and traders who ask you what you think. You keep waiting for someone to laugh when you say, I grew up herding sheep. But no one does. Instead, Dame Beatrice leans in and says, that explains your patience. After dinner, as you walk home through the lamplight streets, You pass by a boy selling tiny paper lanterns on sticks. You buy one. No reason, just because. You fall asleep that night with the lantern glowing gently at your bedside. You dream of scrolls of beeswax of laughing with Jean beside a river that doesn't exist. The next morning, Eleonora tells you she's going away for a few days. Visiting an old friend, she says. Don't burn the place down. Or do. Just not with my ingredients. You nod. She leaves you a list longer than a royal will. You take it seriously. For 3 days, you run the apothecary solo. You mix measure, sell soothe. A child comes in with a scraped knee and leaves with a grin and a cloth-wrapped sweet. An old man requests something for his joints and stays an extra hour telling you about the time he nearly married a duchess and chickened out at the altar. You smile through all of it. At night, you don't collapse from exhaustion. You sit by the fire, write more notes for Jean, sketch out new symbols for your suspicious ingredient list, and realize something important. You belong here. Not just in the apothecary, not just in the archive, in the city. In this moment, in this strange sideways journey, you didn't plan, but wouldn't trade. You look at your hands, still ink-stained, still calloused, still yours, you smile. And then you fall asleep with your head on the table and your lantern flickering beside you. Just another night in the quiet kind of life that grows louder every day with meaning. You wake up to the smell of lavender. It's not yours. Eleonora is back. You stumble into the apothecary still half dreaming, expecting chaos and possibly small fires. Instead, everything is in place. Even more so than you left it. She's sitting behind the counter sipping tea like she never left. You're late, she says, not looking up from her cup. It's 6 in the morning. Exactly. I've already read 2 scrolls and repotted the feverfew. You blink. She finally looks at you. The place didn't fall apart. Impressive. You open your mouth to respond, but she adds, don't let it go to your head. You still misfiled the yarrow tincture. Ah, there it is. Still, she hands you a wrapped bundle. From Mireille, she says. You unwrap it. Inside a bar of soap that smells faintly of honey and ash, hand-pressed paper, and a small silver pin shaped like a sprig of thyme. She said you've got a name in the market now. The scribe who sniffs lies. You don't know whether to laugh or panic, but Eleonora pats your arm. It suits you. Later that morning, you're summoned to the council hall. Again, you wear your best tunic, the one that only has 2 ink stains and a patch that matches most of the original fabric. Beatrice meets you outside. She's holding a small stack of papers and a much larger expression of concern. We've got a situation, she says. You follow her inside. A merchant has been arrested. Counterfeit remedies. False labels. Bottles filled with colored water and courage. Normally that's just a Tuesday. But this merchant, he's got connections. And more concerning, he's using your name. You blink. Beatrice spreads out the evidence. Crates of bottled mixtures, each tagged with endorsed by the apprentice of Eleonora. Some even include a drawn seal that almost resembles yours. You stare. Beatrice waits. Well, she asks. You inhale. Pick up a bottle. Uncork it. Sniff. It's flower water, you say. Lavender and rain. Maybe a drop of vinegar. You pause. But it's clean. Whoever made this, they knew what they were doing. They just lied about what it does. Beatrice nods. We think he studied under a real apothecary. Got bored. Got greedy. You read the name on the arrest sheet. You recognize it. Not from here. From home. He trained for a season under the village healer when you were still herding sheep. A quiet man, clever, always drawing new symbols in the dirt with a stick. You sit back in the chair. He's not a villain, you say, but he's not honest either. Beatrice raises an eyebrow. What do we do with not quite a villain? You think for a long moment. Then you say, let me talk to him. Downstairs, the holding chamber smells like damp stone and regret. He looks up when you enter, blinks twice. Alain, he says. You don't correct him. You don't remind him it's apprentice Alain now, or council consultant, or accidental nose genius. You just sit. He tries to joke. I didn't think they'd send you. You shrug. You use my name. It helped sales. You nod, and helped you into a cell. He frowns. It wasn't poison. I know. That's the problem. It was almost real. He looks away. You both sit in silence. Then you say, you're good. Just not good at staying honest. He mutters, people wanted hope, and you sold it by the bottle you finish. Before you leave, you say one more thing. If you ever want to make something real, write to me. But if I catch your name on another fake tonic, I'll personally mix a purgative strong enough to knock the lies out of your system. He laughs, then coughs, then promises nothing. You return upstairs. Beatrice tilts her head. Well, let him stew, you say, but keep his notes. He's sloppy but creative. She smiles. You're too kind. You grin. Or I just want first pick of his formulas. That night you return to the apothecary. Eleonora is trimming leaves from a new cutting of motherwort. You look tired, she says. You collapse into the chair across from her. Someone used my name to commit light fraud. She nods. Congratulations. That means you're officially important. You groan. She hands you a cup of tea. Not for healing, for unwinding. You drink it slowly. The shop creaks as it cools for the night. The herbs lean toward the window. The mice scratch in their corner. And you sit quietly in the flickering candlelight, sipping from a chipped cup, trying to remember how you got here from a sheep pasture to a city office to interrogating fraudsters in vaulted halls. And somehow, none of it feels out of place. Not anymore. You wake up to rain, not the dramatic thundering kind that rattles shutters and inspires heroic decisions. No. This is medieval drizzle, relentless soft and mildly judgmental. It taps on the window like a persistent librarian. You try to ignore it. You fail. The shop is quieter in the rain. Customers trickle in slower. Most people stay home. Even the mice seem subdued, shuffling around the shelves like they've lost their usual enthusiasm for stealing time. You take advantage of the lull to reorganize the tonic cabinet. Again, because if there's anything more dangerous than hemlock, it's a misfiled label next to the cough syrup. Around mid-morning, Eleonora emerges from the back room with a smirk. You're coming with me, she says, holding a folded cloak. You blink. I just alphabetized the jars. That's adorable. But no. Put your boots on. Now, 15 minutes later, you're trudging down the cobblestone street under a shared oilskin canopy, wondering whether this is an errand or a punishment. It turns out to be neither. She takes you to a small stone house near the edge of the lower market. It's modest, ivy-covered. Looks like it's been asleep for a decade and is mildly offended at being disturbed. This, she says, used to belong to Marius. You nod. Everyone in the trade knows of Marius the herbalist, who supposedly cured a baron's fever with one glance and a bitter root. Before he left, Eleonora says he told me to find someone with quiet hands and a dangerous brain. You stare at her. She tosses you the key. It's yours. To use, not to own, not yet. But it's time you had your own spacey to burn things legally. You turn the key in your hand. You're not sure what you expected to feel. Terror, excitement, fraud. Mostly, you feel ready. Inside the space is dusty but intact. Wooden shelves along 3 walls. A wide table beneath the window. An old kettle still perched on the hearth like it's waiting for gossip. You spend the rest of the day cleaning it. You open every shutter, air out every corner, whisper thank yous to every cobweb that agrees to vacate peacefully. You move in 2 days later. Not everything. Not all at once. Just your tools, your notes, your favorite measuring spoons, and your least embarrassing cloak. It's not a separation from Eleonora, more like an extension, a new branch on the same old tree. And for the first time, people knock on your door. One brings a sick cat. One brings a scroll they can't read. One brings muffins, which you highly suspect are payment for romantic advice. You don't mind. Word spreads quickly. Apparently, the scribe who sniffs lies now has an address. One afternoon, a woman arrives with a basket of mint and a toddler balanced on her hip. She doesn't speak much, just hands you the mint and points at the child's swollen cheek. You kneel. It's a tooth infection. Obvious, painful, manageable. You show the mother how to steep the mint, how to crush clove with warm oil. You write the instructions slowly, clearly, even though she admits she can't read. I'll learn, she says softly. Soon. You smile. Come back in 3 days, you say. I'll check him again. She hesitates, then adds, Thank you, Master Alain. The title feels strange, not bad, just unwrinkled, like new boots, or the first page of a blank scroll. You nod. After she leaves, you stare at the recipe drawer and realize you've stopped asking for permission to belong here. This is your bench now, your jar system, your reputation, your oddly specific notes about the emotional state of Basil. You still help Eleonora at the shop, still file for Beatrice at the council, still sort nonsense with Oswin at the archive. But here, you get to be the whole version of yourself, the scribe, the apothecary, the curious, careful, sharp-eyed shepherd who started life ankle-deep in sheep poop and now gets letters addressed with wax seals. That night, you light a candle in the new hearth. It smokes at first, sulks a little, then glows warm and steady. You sit beside it, alone, but not lonely. You pull out a fresh piece of parchment and begin another letter to Jean. You tell him, today I became a place, not just a person or a job or a helper in someone else's story. I'm the door they knock on and the name they trust. Isn't that wild? You smile as you write, because yeah, it really is. You wake up to the sound of someone knocking, not politely, not like hello, are you open, but like I might die if you don't answer this door in the next 3 seconds. You grab your cloak and stumble down the stairs of your new space, half-buttoned and fully confused. Outside stands a boy, breathless, mud on his knees, eyes wide enough to swallow daylight. They said you help people he pants. My sister's sick, won't wake up. You don't ask questions. You grab your satchel, shove 3 small jars and your thickest notebook inside and follow him. The streets blur past in a rush of rooftops and slanted sunlight. He leads you to a row of tenement houses, stacked brick-cracked windows, laundry, flapping like sleepy flags. The kind of place where people know the cost of bread and the name of every rat in the wall. Inside, it's dim. The girl lies curled on a straw mat, cheeks flushed, breathing quick and shallow. A woman sits beside her mother, probably wringing her hands hard enough to strangle a ghost. You kneel, quiet, observing. Her breath hitches when you touch her wrist. Her pulse is fast, uneven. You smell her skin. It's not fever, it's oil. Your brain clicks. You ask the mother, did she eat anything strange? The woman hesitates, then points to a wrapped pastry still sitting on the table. From the market, she says. It was free. Of course it was. You unwrap it, smell it. Clove. Too much of it. And something bitter, underneath an herb that shouldn't be anywhere near food, unless your intention is to turn naps into comas. You mix an emetic, slowly, carefully. The boy helps. His hands tremble, but he doesn't drop anything. You place a few drops under the girl's tongue. Wait, then more. Minutes crawl past. Then she stirs. Not a full wake-up, but a groan, a twitch. Enough. You sit back. The mother weeps. You don't say it's all right, because it isn't yet. But it will be. And that's something. By sunset, the girl is sitting up pale but alert. You give the family a small jar of ginger tonic and instructions in your clearest handwriting. As you leave, the boy grabs your hand. She always liked stories, he says. Can I tell her yours? You pause, then smile. Only if you make me taller in it. Back at your workspace, you collapse into your chair. You haven't eaten, haven't breathed deeply in hours. You write the incident down in your records, annotated, cross-referenced, then send a message to the council hall. The next morning, you're summoned to a market hearing. A vendor has been arrested, selling free food laced with clove and belladonna. No one knows why yet, but he'd labeled the pastries as gifts from a benevolent noble. Beatrice looks at you across the table. You really do have a nose for nonsense. You shrug. It keeps following me around. She hands you a scroll, an offer, not council employment, not permanent, but official consultation, with pay, with seal. Say yes, she says, and I'll even let you design your own title. You grin. What's the budget for pretentious Latin? That evening, you return to the shop to find Eleonora waiting with soup. You missed lunch, she says, and I hate sentimental heroics on an empty stomach. You sit, eat, thank her. She doesn't say I'm proud of you. She says, next time take gloves, which honestly means the same thing. After dinner, you walk the long way home. The streets are quiet now. Just the echo of boots and the occasional snore from a windowsill above. You pass the boy's house. A light glows inside. You smile. You pass the archive. Oswin's window is lit too. He's probably deep in a footnote war with a scroll that refuses to end. And finally, you reach your door. You unlock it. Breathe in the familiar scent. Beeswax, paper, lavender, and chalk. You sit at your desk and write. Not notes. Not formulas. But your own story. How you started with sheep. How you learned to read lies by smell. How you healed a city, one drop, one truth, one moment at a time. You don't know how it ends, but you know how tomorrow starts. With you, at your bench. Ready. You don't expect a letter from the palace. Honestly, you don't expect a letter ever, unless it's from Jean, or one of the many toddlers who now write you notes made of scribbles and questionable jam. But one morning, there it is. Creamy parchment, gold wax, a seal that looks like it costs more than your entire herb cabinet. You sniff it. Smells like politics and overconfidence. Still, Curiosity wins. Inside a formal request, the Queen's herbalist is indisposed, and a certain advisor has recommended your discretion and skill. You are summoned to consult on a sensitive matter regarding the royal family's health. You read the letter twice, then turn to your cat. Well, guess we're going to the palace. The cat yawns, unimpressed. The next day, you put on your least embarrassing cloak, the one without burn holes. You even brush your boots. The palace is predictably ridiculous. It smells like roses and furniture wax. The kind of place where people whisper on purpose, and the rugs have their own social status. You're ushered through 4 corridors, 3 courtyards, and what might have been a diplomatic tea duel in progress. Eventually, you're brought to a chamber with too many cushions and one very grumpy-looking prince. He's 15, red-eyed, sweaty, clearly feverish. Beside him, a frantic nurse, a nervous physician, and one very bored parrot. The court physician clears his throat. He hasn't responded to our standard leeches and prayer rotation. You raise your eyebrows, and this surprises you. They don't laugh. Tough crowd. You approach the boy. He scowls. If you give me boiled cabbage water again, I'll scream. You nod solemnly. Then I better not. You check his pulse. Skin, tongue, eyes. Something's off. Not just fever. Not just illness. You ask for a list of everything he's eaten. The kitchen delivers a scroll that looks like a tragic novel. You skim it. Pause. Did he eat these candied pears yesterday? The cook nods. Where were they stored? Cellar 6. You ask to visit it. Cellar 6 smells musty, overripe, and then aha, the telltale scent of moldy quince. You find the jar, cracked seal, white bloom on the inside. The pears were contaminated. Not lethal, but enough to wreck a royal stomach and start a small political scandal if anyone found out. You return. Mix a gentle tonic. Birch bark. Mint. A little honey. The prince eyes it suspiciously. It's not cabbage, is it? You hand him the cup. Tastes like ambition and regret. He drinks it. 3 hours later, he's upright and asking for cheese. The queen's steward calls you into a private hall. Your discretion, he says, is appreciated. He hands you a pouch heavier than any coin bag you've held before. You blink, and that's when it hits you. You just treated royalty. With a sniff, a question, and a spoonful of mint. You walk home through the city feeling unrecognizable. Not like a new person, but like a page rewritten in better ink. People wave as you pass. One street urchin shouts, "Hey, potion master." You wince, but also smile. Later that week, a new sign appears on your door. You didn't hang it. It simply appears, handwritten, elegant, tacked on, with rosewood nails. It says, "The Scribe Apothecary." Hours whenever sense wins over panic. You leave it up. It feels right. You still get common folk. Still get twisted ankles and stubborn warts and elderly men trying to flirt by asking about nettle tea. But now you get noble messengers too. Discreet visits, sealed letters, gratitude baked into pastries instead of gold. And through it all, you write to Jean. Do you remember the first time we stole firewood and thought we were rebels, you write? I just told a countess to stop eating cheese-dipped peaches before bed. How's that for rebellion? You laugh. Quietly. The fire crackles beside you. The wind rattles the shutters, and you realize something both strange and soft. You don't need to dream of escape anymore. You are the thing you once dreamed of becoming. Not a knight. Not a scholar. Not a legend, but someone people trust. Someone with a key to something real. And that is richer than any title you could have imagined. It starts with a knock. Not urgent this time, just a light tap tap at the side door. The one only a few people use. The one you left slightly open because the jasmine plant inside likes the morning breeze. Standing there is Margot. You haven't seen her since the festival. She looks different now. Thinner, paler, but with that same unreadable look she used to give during chess games, like she already knows 3 moves ahead, and she's letting you think you're winning. "Can I come in?" she asks. You step aside. She walks in, sits at your work table, like it's still hers, and places something wrapped in linen on the bench. A book, bound in worn leather. Smells of lavender old ink and faintly burnt sugar. "I found it in my father's belongings," she says. "I think he meant for you to have it." You open it slowly. The pages are covered in cramped handwriting diagrams, pressed leaves, and annotations in at least 3 different languages. It's not just a book. It's a legacy. The personal herbal of Master Augustin Margot's father, the man who once taught the best apothecaries in the region before retiring mysteriously, and who was whispered to have made medicine that worked so well it was called improper. You look up. You're sure she nods. He always liked how you asked questions. Even when you were wrong, you laugh. I'm still wrong. I just ask faster now. You make tea. 2 mugs. No sugar. Just lemon balm. And a sprig of something nameless you grew from a stolen cutting. Margot sips in silence. Then she says, "I'm leaving." Your heart doesn't drop. It blinks. "Where?" "South. I've got an offer to train with the archivists at Montreval. They have scrolls no one's read in centuries. Plus, the mountains smell better." You smile. Less sewage. More goats. She raises her cup. Exactly. You sit in quiet. The fire crackles. The cat snores under the bench. And somewhere outside, a baker drops a tray of loaves and swears in 3 languages. Margot stands, hands you a folded letter. If you ever get bored being the city's favorite nose come visit, you nod. Can't speak? Not really. After she leaves, you spend hours with the book. Every page is a mystery, a recipe, a puzzle, a doorway. You copy some entries, test a few. One combination makes your nose itch so hard you sneeze on your cat. Another helps a street musician sleep without his nightmares. And just one turns a bitter root into something that makes tea taste like hope. You send a sample to Beatrice. She sends back a note that just says, "You wizard." Life settles again. Not quieter, just more rooted. You begin holding study nights for the apprentices. They sit in a circle, trade stories, argue about chamomile, and dare each other to taste weird salves. You let them. Every so often, one of them says something that makes you realize they're smarter than you were at their age. And then you remember you weren't their age when you started. You were older. You were angrier. And now, you're not. One night, as the apprentices leave, one stays behind. A girl with ink-stained fingers and a scar on her cheek from something she refuses to explain. She says, "Do you think people like us ever get remembered?" You think, then say, "Not usually, but we remember each other." She nods and writes that down. Later you visit Jean's house again. It's still crooked. Still smells like bees and burnt cider. She's out back yelling at a goose. You join her, help her patch the coop. And when she asks if you've saved any royalty lately, you say, only from themselves. She laughs so hard, she drops a hammer on her foot. And that night, under the stars, you realize something. You've gone from mud to medicine, from nameless to necessary, and you're not done yet. There's more to study, more to heal, more to learn. But for the first time in a long time, you don't feel like you're climbing out of something. You feel like you've arrived somewhere between winter's thaw and spring's first sneeze. Your name appears in a book, not one you wrote, not one you even knew about. It's a small volume bound in reddish cloth, titled Folk Remedies and the Urban Miracle Case Studies in Modern Apothecary Work. The author, a scholar from Montreval. Inside, a whole chapter is labeled The Scribe Apothecary of Leroy, an unofficial saint of boiled roots. You blink. You reread the first sentence 3 times. In a small corner of Leroy, past the uneven bricks and the alley that always smells faintly of cinnamon and sewage, lives an apothecary who treats peasants, princes, and poets with equal parts honesty and time. You choke on your tea. You write to Margot. Is this you? Did you do this? Her reply comes 2 weeks later in dramatically oversized calligraphy. I might have told a few stories. For science, you frame the letter. Not because of vanity, because of proof. You exist, not just as a neighbor or healer, but as a story someone else tells. That realization is quiet, gentle, like the opposite of loneliness. You keep working. The days get longer. More flowers appear in your window than you planted. You suspect your apprentices are decorating behind your back. You don't stop them. A traveling bard stops by one afternoon offering a song in exchange for something that can fix a heartbreak caused by someone who owns a really good hat. You give them valerian root and a cookie. They return a week later with a lute song called The Potion That Tasted Like Closure. You applaud and sneak the cookie recipe into your drawer of sacred things. You get letters, now ones you don't recognize from towns you've never visited. One is from a baker in Thorn who says your elderberry tincture saved his fingers from freezing, and now he sends you a pie every solstice. You write back, tell the pie, I said thank you. It's not just healing anymore. It's connection. You're no longer just reacting to pain. You're weaving something, a network, a map of kindness in mismatched envelopes. One day, you visit the archives in the city library. A new exhibit is on display, Herbs and Hope Unsung Healers of the Medieval Age. You see your handwriting, a list of ingredients, a pressed violet. Next to it, a note from a historian donated anonymously, likely from the Scribe Apothecary collection. You snort. Loudly, the librarian scolds you. You apologize, but inside you glow. When you leave, a child points at you, whispers, I think that's the one from the storybook. You wink, then trip over your own cloak. Mystery maintained. Summer rolls in, like it always does in Leroy, with too much dust, not enough rain, and neighbors who pretend sweat is a fashion choice. Your shop becomes a haven, not because it's cool, it isn't, but because it smells like dried lavender and judgment. And somehow, people find that comforting. You start offering shaded tea outside your door. People show up for it. At first, it's just travelers and tired market goers, but then locals begin stopping by. Not always for herbs, sometimes just to sit. They talk. They rest. They leave behind crumbs and stories. One afternoon, a boy sits quietly by your bench and watches you sort fennel seeds. After a while, he asks, "Do you think poor people can be important?" You pause, then say, "I think poor people are already important. They're just too busy surviving to make a fuss about it." He nods, picks up a fennel seed, puts it in his pocket. You don't stop him. That night, you write the moment down in your journal with the title Boy Seed Hope. Your journal has gotten thicker, not just recipes now, observations, conversations, the scent of storm clouds over old rooftops, a doodle of a very round goose that once bit you. It's turning into something more than memory. It's a chronicle, not for fame, for continuity, because you remember what it felt like to not know where you fit. And now you want others to find a map. You start copying recipes into small notebooks. At first, they're just for your apprentices. Then you make more. You leave one at the weaver's shop, another in the basket of a nurse with tired eyes. Soon, people begin copying them too. You never ask them to. But someone adds drawings. Someone else adds a poem. The books grow branches of a tree you never planned to plant. Then one market day, a noblewoman arrives, not disguised, not sneaky, just present. Her name is Lady Aveline of Castres-sur-Mer. She has 3 guards, a golden pin shaped like a fox, and a face that says, "I once ran away from a ball just to pet a dog." She asks, "Are you the one who cured the mayor's hives with pickled rose petals?" You nod. They also worked on a chicken, so I figured it was safe for mayors. She grins. "I need your help." You blink. "Chicken related?" She laughs. "No. My brother has been sick for months. No one knows what's wrong." You pack a satchel. 3 hours later, you're in a silk-draped manor, diagnosing a man who's clearly allergic to whatever perfume he's been bathing in. You recommend mint baths, oat poultices, and fewer crushed rubies in his wine. He recovers in a week. Lady Aveline sends you a velvet pouch filled with coin. You send it back with a note. "We accept payment in cheese pies or small compliments." She sends both. And a goat. You name it Earl. Earl likes your porch and dislikes your curtains. Balance, as always. Autumn hums at your doorstep again. It arrives like a memory, warm at the edges, crisp in the middle, and wrapped in the smell of burning leaves and apple skins. You've been here before, in this same chair, under this same tree. But somehow, everything feels different, because now, people wave at you from across the street. They remember your name. Even Earl the goat gets a few nods of respect. There's a new mural in the town square. It's not large, just a circle of painted herbs, lavender, rosemary, chamomile, and something that looks suspiciously like your handwriting tucked among the vines. No signature. But you know, and more importantly, they know. One morning, your youngest apprentice, who still forgets to tie their shoes, rushes in holding a letter. "You got invited," they shout, nearly tripping over the cat. "To what you ask, barely awake, and mostly covered in mint leaves. To the Royal Herbal Guild Conference," they beam. In the capital, you stare, blink, and very calmly reply, "I don't own any shoes appropriate for a guild conference." They look at you, then hand you their spare boots. They don't fit. You wear them anyway. The journey to the capital takes 3 days. 3 nights of inns that smell like sausage and candle wax, and too many attempts to read, while the cart hits every rock from here to eternity. When you arrive, you're overwhelmed. Not by the size, though it is absurd, but by the quiet way people look at you. They nod, not out of politeness, out of recognition. You've become a kind of legend, Not the loud kind, the soft kind, the kind whispered about between tea sips and folded linens, the kind that smells like rosemary and sounds like a laugh you didn't expect. At the Guild, you don't speak on stage, you sit on a panel. And when asked how you built your reputation, you say, I started by giving people tea and listening to their weather complaints. They laugh, but they also write it down. You return home with a pin that says, Honorary Member of the Royal Guild, a cloak that's somehow more pockets than fabric, and a letter from Lady Aveline that reads, You should really write a book. You think about it. You look at your journals, the scribbled notes, the pressed leaves, the margins where your apprentices drew smiley faces next to important recipes. You gather it all, bind it into one big strange volume. You call it The Kind Healer's Guide to Being Slightly Confused but Mostly Helpful. It becomes popular in precisely 3 bakeries and 1 monastery. You're proud. Years later, as you sit under the same old tree, you see the boy with the fennel seed again. He's taller now, wearing a cloak with a symbol you don't recognize, holding a bag full of small notebooks. He grins and says, I've been copying your work. I thought maybe it was time someone carried it farther. You smile, hand him a cookie, say nothing else, because sometimes silence is the blessing. And now the leaves have settled. The tea has cooled. The goat, yes, Earl, is asleep beneath the bench, dreaming his grassy dreams. And you've made it through not just a story, but a whole quiet revolution. From nameless to known, from soup scraps to secret letters, from just someone to someone worth remembering. You didn't need gold or titles or a castle. You needed kindness, patience, a handful of herbs, and a pocketful of stubborn hope. Your story was never loud, but it echoed. In the laugh of a baker healed in time to need again. In the scribbled notes, passed hand to hand through towns you've never walked. In the child who asked, Can poor people be important? And now tells others, Yes, I've seen it. And if any of this, any moment, any sigh, any spoon of elderberry syrup made your breath soften tonight or helped you believe in your own quiet worth, then maybe that's the real magic. So rest now. You've earned it. Your journey from rags to roots to recognition was never about wealth. It was about legacy, the kind that glows softly in candlelight and smells faintly of time. That's the story. For tonight, may your dreams be filled with wonder and peace.